532, you're assigned to Wisconsin. Did you copy the 505?
Not Start me a card for a parking problem.
911, what's your emergency?
Yeah, my next door neighbor broke into my house and stole my drugs.
911 what?
A fun, unique podcast taking you behind the badge. Unbelievable stories exploring the day in the life of a first responder. 911 is made possible by Carlos Bail Bonding and Eric Buchanan and Associates, fighting for those that have been denied disability, life, long-term care, and health benefits nationwide. Now, here's your host, DeMarlon Dean.
Welcome to this episode of 911 What? Thank you so much for joining us today. I have a super cool guest today, and he's actually the first firefighter that I've had on since my son. The only firefighter I've had on, I believe, has been my son, just as he finished the fire academy. So today we have firefighter Trevor Williams from LA County Fire Department, and he has an amazing story, not only of some of his fire service, but just his story growing up is amazing. And he actually found himself in the middle of Haiti during the earthquake. So we'll hear about that story and all kinds of funny calls. I've looked through his questionnaire, and yeah, there's some treats in here. So I am looking forward to this show today, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on. Trevor, how in the world are you today, sir?
Hey, I'm good. I'm very excited to be here to meet you and to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I am looking forward to it. So, I actually heard you on another podcast. I believe it was Enduring the Badge, and I was just really taken in by your story. So start at the beginning. Tell us, because you literally, if anybody was born to do this, I would say you were born to at least serve and be in a serving capacity. So tell us how you grew up and what led you to become a firefighter.
Sure, absolutely. So I was born into a missionary family. I'm the firstborn, and I have two younger sisters, but we grew up doing emergency relief work in Africa and in Haiti. Spent 4 years in Africa and Zaire, South Africa. Zaire is called Democratic Republic of Congo now. And then in Haiti, lived there almost 4 years as well. And I was in Haiti while I was in high school. And then we came to California to get away from Haiti. It was getting a little violent, some civil unrest going on. And I finished up my high school in California, but I had the opportunity to go back to Haiti to visit my family. I'd been living on my own in California. I got to visit them the week before Haiti's devastating 7.0 earthquake back on January 12th of 2010. This was one of the largest natural disasters in modern history, killing estimated 300,000 people and leaving 1 million more people homeless. So,
man,
yeah, absolute tragedy.
That's crazy. And
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, speak up a little bit, because I'm just fading off a little for me. So, but just make sure you keep speaking up so all these guests can hear this wonderful story. But Haiti, 2010, 300,000 estimated folks killed. How old were you when you went back to visit Haiti?
I was 19 years old. I finished high school, and I was pursuing firefighting. I had just gotten my EMT certification, national registered, and I was taking fire science classes at the time. So,
were you working as an EMT yet, or just got your certification?
No, it wasn't. I don't think I was working as an EMT yet, because I had just gotten my national. I was working construction, though, some general contracting, which later brought me into a door carpenter later on in my career. And we'll circle back to that. But I was doing a little bit.
That actually led to it. Yeah, that actually led to an invention that you have and that you're using to help facilitate saving lives and putting out fires. So we'll certainly get around to that. So here you were, 19 years old. You just got your EMT certification. You were not a firefighter yet, but I think you probably had aspirations of being a firefighter, and you find yourself in the middle of one of the largest earthquakes ever. Tell me about that day.
So that day, I was at an orphanage on the second floor. There's 110 kids at this orphanage. And my mom and my two sisters were not with me. They had just gotten home from school. They were at their apartment. My dad was at work. So we're all split up. When this earthquake started, I didn't know it was an earthquake right away. Even having lived in California, I never experienced an earthquake where I recognized it. So this started out as like a low rumble, and it felt like a Big Mac truck full of rocks was coming down the road at first. And then it started to get really loud, and the building I was in started to shake. Again, I was on the second floor, so I had a little bit of a vantage point where I could see what was around me. And I started seeing buildings collapse around me, and dust.
Oh my goodness!
Dust fly up in the air. Cracks went in our walls, and before long, it felt like a train was crashing into our building. And we're swaying back and forth. At that point, somebody yelled earthquake, so it was very obvious that we were now experiencing an earthquake. And this earthquake lasted 39 seconds long and 7.0. So it was very powerful. And after about 10 seconds, it wasn't fun anymore. It became very, very scary. And every second seemed like a minute.
Yes.
So I prepared to jump because I felt like our building was going to collapse. And I didn't want to be in the collapse. So I knew I could probably jump off the second story and survive. I saw a truck down below that might soften my fall with the shocks of the tires. So I waited on the balcony ready to jump. But I also knew there was a lot of kids in this building that we needed to protect. And the floor that I was on were all special needs kids. So they needed help walking and they needed to be carried. So waited till the shaking stopped. And then we evacuated out the second floor, grabbed all the kids, and we got everybody into a safe collapse zone. I guess out of the collapse zone so that no walls or buildings would be able to hit us if there was a secondary earthquake or collapse. And there were tons of aftershocks, hundreds and hundreds of aftershocks over the next few days. Every minute initially, and these aftershocks were like 5.0 earthquakes. So they weren't small little tremors. They're bringing down more buildings with these aftershocks.
Yeah, these aftershocks are bigger than most people's earthquakes that they've experienced. In 39 seconds, I just want to unpack that a little bit. 39 seconds of a major earthquake like that seems like an eternity. That is a long time for an earthquake to be rolling or shaking.
Felt like forever.
Yeah. And I was going to ask if you thought you were going to die, but it sounds like dying was not an option. You were looking at, all right, how am I getting out of here? But then also realized that you had people that were dependent on you. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah. So I can't save other people if I don't save myself. And that's something that we're taught in the fire service as well. I'm no good if I die. So first priority would be to keep myself safe, but also save as many with me as possible, and then be able to go back and pull people out and render aid. Was a lot was going through my head in just a few seconds, but initially it's fight or flight, right? So it's survival mode at that point.
Did everyone in your building survive?
Yes, everybody survived. There was a wall that came down where there had been a bunch of kids eating maybe 5 to 10 minutes earlier, but they had cleared out of that area. So their lives were spared. And yeah, everybody at the orphanage survived, and we were able to hunker down in place for a couple hours. Cell phones didn't work. All the cell phone towers went down. I didn't know where my family was. I knew that my dad would probably be the one coming to find me if he was okay, because he had the car. And so I just waited. And the earthquake happened, I think it was like 4 p.m. somewhere in that range. So in the evening, starting to get into the evening. And by the time my dad showed up, it was 10 p.m. So it was dark. It was late at night. That orphanage was down in the city of Haiti. So we couldn't see much of what was around us. Haiti is mountainous all the way down to the ocean. And where we were was like the flat part before the ocean. So didn't have the mountain vantage point, and I didn't know how bad the earthquake really had been, what it affected, how many people died. Nobody knew at that point. And so I just waited. My dad showed up, and he told me he had some bad news, that he had gone back to the apartment where my mom and my two sisters, where he knew they had been, and he told me there were no survivors at the apartment. He didn't say they were dead, but he implied it, and it seemed like he believed that, but he couldn't find them, and there was no survivors there. So, go ahead.
I was going to say, now, spoiler alert, I know that they did survive, but how long did you guys have to go before finding them and knowing that they were okay?
Yeah, they did survive, and everybody's okay. Don't want to leave anybody hanging there. But it was almost, at least 12 hours before we found them, because me and my dad got together and then made our way up into the mountains to the pastor's house. We stayed there that night. Aftershocks continued to hit, and I couldn't sleep because I was thinking about my mom and sisters, if they were alive or not. And the next morning, I wanted to hit the road and be there as soon as possible to dig them out or find them, or know if they were okay or not. So we got on the road pretty soon. The people we're staying with wanted us to eat so that we had our strength. I wasn't hungry, but forced down a little bit of food. And my dad started talking about funeral plans, which is when that hit me so hard, because I was trying to keep hope alive and refused to believe that anything could have happened to them. And then when he started talking about funeral plans, that's when I lost it. And I walked outside onto the balcony at the place that we were staying, and it was my first time seeing daylight since the earthquake. And now we're up in the mountains where I could see all of Haiti, and there was smoke and fires and rubble and dust, and the sun was just starting to rise, and it was picking all of that up. And you could hear wailing of people, just sobbing and mourning. And that's when I started to cry. And that image is so vivid to me. That's one of the things that sticks out to me about that day, other than finding my family alive. So not long after that, we made our way down the mountain, and we went to my dad's office, who worked for World Vision. And as we were getting there, my mom and sisters were being dropped off. And they had survived the collapse. The apartment fully collapsed, 5 stories, pancaked down.
Wow.
They were on the bottom floor. They jumped out. The wall broke open. They jumped out of the wall. It was on the side of the mountain. They rolled down the mountain. My mom was barefoot. My youngest sister, she was 6. She was barefoot. And then my other sister was 12 at the time. And she had shoes on. But they all helped each other. They got beat up a little bit, and they spent the night in a tree for safety.
Spent the night in a tree?
In a tree, because right away there was looting, pillaging. Prisoners broke out of prison. Haiti's not a safe country for women on their own, so they did everything they could to hide and try and be safe. And they felt that a tree in an earthquake, it had already withstood a pretty powerful one, and that wasn't going anywhere. So to them, that seemed safer, and I think they were right. That seemed safer than trying to find a building to hide in or some rubble. So they were covered in debris, dust, bleeding, limping, holding each other, crying, but they were alive. and we all held each other. Me, my dad, my mom, my two sisters held each other, cried, and thank God that he had brought us all through, because not everybody was as fortunate as we were.
Yeah, I mean, my listeners, you think you have it bad until you realize that his family had to live stay in a tree, sleep in a tree, take a refuge up in a tree just to be safe through the night. Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. So what exactly did your father or your father and mother do? What type of mission work was it? Because you guys seemed to be in pretty dangerous places.
We worked in a lot of war zones, a lot of civil unrest. My dad worked for World Vision, which is a large nonprofit organization that does a whole array of different things, anywhere from education, sponsoring children, to building houses, to digging wells, planting crops. I always categorize it as emergency relief work because where we were sent, it always seemed to be where nobody else wanted to go. And a little bit more dangerous than the common places that you might be sent. My dad even worked in Somalia for a year, and that was so dangerous he didn't bring the family. He commuted for that one. But yeah.
My goodness.
So,
well, my hat's off to him.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Inspired me, and everything that I've done with my life has a lot to do with him. So.
Well, that was going to be my next question. How much of a role do you feel like your childhood played into, what you're ultimately doing now, a fireman?
Yeah, I think it is extremely correlated because I grew up helping people, and that's all I knew. And I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed, there's something about, I think we're all called to help those less fortunate than ourselves. And once I was back in America, where it's a little bit harder we're very privileged in America, and we don't realize it because we're in it most of the time.
Yeah.
But we're extremely privileged. And one way that I could continue to serve and help others was through firefighting as a public servant, being an EMT and also a firefighter, and helping people out on their worst days.
Absolutely. And you talk about helping people on their worst days. There was some trial by fire when you were in Haiti. I think you told a story of when there were actually some firefighters there was some relief help that came from LA, and but they wouldn't accept your help because you weren't official yet. But then you got thrown in the fire, so to speak, and were doing all kinds of things that you probably did not imagine doing 2 weeks before.
Yeah. So after back to Haiti, after we found my family, they got evacuated out by the U.S. Air Force a day later. And I had the opportunity to go with them and go back to America, but I felt like I was in the perfect place to help, where there was just so much need and not enough help. And I knew a little bit about search and rescue. I knew how to be an EMT and render first aid, and I knew how to do some firefighting skills. So I wanted to stay in Haiti and help, especially since I'd lived there for a few years prior. I knew a little bit of the language, enough to get around, and I knew Haiti. I know how Haiti operates. So I stayed. I stayed in Haiti for almost a month after the earthquake, and I worked with search and rescue teams. I worked with rubble removal teams, clearing wells so that people could get clean water again. I worked in the hospitals with my National Registry EMT card, which I had dug out of the apartment. Somebody had gone and looted our apartment. They found my wallet, took the money, but they'd risked more than I would want to risk to go find it. And I had to beat up National Registry EMT card that they actually looked up when I went to one of these MASH hospitals. And after that, we didn't abide by the EMT laws in a third world country war zone. So I got to do a lot of skills that I wouldn't normally do here in the States. But it was the most good in the shortest amount of time. We had to triage and prioritize people coming in with gunshot wounds because the prisoners had broken free, and with lots and lots of amputee crush injuries because they had been in a collapsed building and lost their arm or lost their leg. So I got to help with a lot of surgeries. I got to learn how to start IVs, and you could work until you dropped there. I'd take naps and then get back at it. So
that's crazy. Before we get, because you also had a really incredibly, I'm not going to say lucky. I'm going to say it's a God thing. I could see as you tell the story of how you made it home finally, I can see God's fingerprints all through it. But think about all of the medical training, or I won't say training, but all of the medical procedures that you did and what you got thrown into. Can you think of anything that really stuck with you that helped you in your career? You know, you thought back to, okay, I learned how to do this, this, and this when I was in Haiti, you know, thrown in the middle of it. So no problem now.
Well, I did start a lot of IVs, but that's not a skill that I am allowed to practice as a basic EMT, as a fireman. If I become a paramedic, that's a skill that I would get to use. I think that's a good question. Nobody's asked me this before, but thinking about it, I would say two things. One is being able to tolerate just gruesome environments where there's a lot of blood and guts or death. And then the other thing would be smells. I smelled a lot of really bad stuff, especially as the weeks went on and there's still people buried underneath this rubble.
Yeah.
And I go on a lot of calls as a fireman where same thing, it doesn't smell good in the house, whether it's
right.
like a hoarder condition or somebody who's been neglected for too long or a dead body. We go on almost every shift, something that is unpleasant to experience. And my nose is done. This is all burnt out from being in Haiti and smelling bad things. So I can tolerate a lot when it comes to that sort of thing. But
yeah, I forgot. Actually, I was saying that my son was the only firefighter that I had. But no, I've actually had several. As you start talking about that, I was like, wait a minute, I've had several firefighters on. I actually did a short series on 9/11, and I had a couple of firefighters on during that period, as well as some others since then. And because you brought back to my remembrance, one of them talked about how sometimes when he grills food, it brings back some of the smells when he was a firefighter, and how sometimes that's just a trigger. And he's like, I can't do it. Have to stop. So yeah, that could be a blessing and a curse. And that's why so many first responders deal with, things like PTSD and just later in life, so much stuff, because you were in the middle of it. You couldn't really stop to think about necessarily how terrible the things that you were experiencing were and are. You just have to kind of, separate yourself, compartmentalize it, do your job, help people, and move on. You almost, as cold as it sounds, I remember one of the things I remembered that sticks out with me in the police academy is we had to witness an autopsy. Mm. And so we're in the medical examiner, and you're sitting there looking at this person that just not too long ago had a life, family, and all those things. And then they bring out the saw and start cutting these people up and opening them up, and it's not pretty at all. But in a very short amount of time, you don't feel like you're looking at a person anymore. Now this is not even real. This is just some stuff that's laying here on this table, and it's all clinical now. This is just, science. This is biology. This is no longer a human being. This is just a bunch of stuff, organs and all this kind of stuff. And so you learn really quickly to kind of, detach yourself from that. And that's not necessarily a good thing. It's just, it's survival. That's what you have to do to survive. Yeah. But, as a first responder, you also have to realize that that's not normal. Most people can't sit through that kind of stuff and then go have dinner. Right. So got to keep it all in balance. So.
And to touch on that, I was able to process. I think I did have some undiagnosed PTSD after Haiti. but I was able to work through it because when I came back to the States, I started a nonprofit to build houses for earthquake survivors, and I was able to speak all over the place at colleges and churches and just different events. I was able to share my story. And once you share your story, like I am today, once you share your story a couple hundred times and talk about it, that allows you to process. And people ask you questions. You thought you heard them all, but then somebody asks you a new question and you're like, oh, okay, I need to process that part too that I never did before. And I think that helped me kind of get through it, whereas my family got yanked out of Haiti without getting to like bring any closure. And that messed with them a lot. So they, for years, like they were very jumpy and like loud noises affected them, and they were going to therapy, and they're good now, but it took them a long time. And I think that my tolerance to life, my bad days have to be really bad for me to acknowledge it as a bad day. And in your questionnaire, you asked me like, what's one of your worst days? And I think when I read that, it was pertaining to the fire service, and I couldn't think of it. And I asked my wife, because I'm really good at forgetting bad stuff. That's just how I've like trained myself. Like, I don't want to remember the bad. So I asked my wife, I was like, hey, look at this question. Like, have I had any like really bad days? And she brought up some stuff, but I was like, for me, those aren't bad days. You know, maybe somebody else, but like I said, my tolerance is pretty high when it comes to a bad day.
That's very interesting that you ask her. And of course, you know, she's thinking things that are pretty bad in her mind. And you're like, okay. But that's also good that you share with her, because that's one of the things that does help you stay healthy is sharing. And so many times I've heard over and over again, and I did it myself, we keep it all to ourselves because we don't want to burden our family, so to speak. But your family is there to support you. And while they don't necessarily want to know or hear all the gory details, they certainly want to hear whatever it is you need to share so that you can be healthy. And, you know, they want to help you through that process. So that's cool to hear that you did that. So, let's see. So I don't have to split this into 2 episodes. Let's go ahead and get this to how you got home, because at some point you decided, okay, I've done what I needed to do. It's time to get home, but it wasn't so easy.
Right. So yeah, this was about a month in to me being in Haiti, and I felt in my heart it was time to go home. And the airports were shut down. They weren't letting anybody fly into Haiti. It was a mess. There had been people waiting on the tarmac for weeks trying to catch a plane to get home. And people told me there's no way you're getting home. On top of that, I had no money. I'd lost it, pretty much everything I had in the earthquake, in the apartments. And yeah, it was like, there's no way you're getting home. I was like, okay, fine, but take me to the airport. And so I got a ride to the airport, got dropped off. There's a line for, security. I don't even have an ID. And I just walked past everybody waiting to get checked in, walked past security. Nobody said anything. And then I made my way out to the tarmac where there's just hundreds of people camped out waiting for a plane or waiting for an opportunity. And somebody walked up to me and they said, hey, we just had a spot open up on our like little private charter plane. We felt like we should ask you. So within 20 minutes, I was on a plane headed to the Bahamas to stop and then go to the U.S., which is way faster than we get anywhere else in the States. Like, there's no way you're getting on a plane in 20 minutes within showing up to the airport. So stopped in Bahamas, refueled, and then flew to Florida. I didn't have a cell phone, money, ID, anything. And we landed. I didn't even know like where we were, what airport. All I knew is we were in America, in Florida. And I had to find a phone to call my dad and let him know I'd made it back, because they hadn't heard from me. I mean, maybe I'd try and talk to him once a week while I was there, just to let him know I'm still alive and stuff. But yeah, got outside, borrowed a cell phone. It was starting to rain. I was like, hey, Dad, I'm in the States. you want to help me fly somewhere?" And he's like, "Yeah, you should fly." They were in Connecticut, recovering, and he's like, "You should come spend some time with us and get some closure, and then when you're ready, fly back to California." And he said, "I'm going to book you a flight right now. You need to make your way to this airport by tomorrow," because it was like nighttime when we landed. So he's like, "Tomorrow morning, you need to be at this airport." I saw a van about to leave. I jumped in the van and I was like, "Hey, can I go with you guys?" They said yes. And we drove for a while. And I'm like, "Man, I hope."
And you didn't even know where you were
I didn't
going.
even know where we were going. And I was like, "Man, I hope I'm going the right direction." And turns out, yeah, they were going to near the same airport that I needed to be at. And they let me stay on their hotel room floor that night. And then we caught a free shuttle to get on that airplane the next morning. And it's like every step of the way was just paved for me. And I felt like there was maybe God looking out for me on that one.
Absolutely. That's an incredible story. So here you are, 19 years old, going to visit family in Haiti who's your parents have a history of serving others in pretty terrible places, and find yourself in the middle of one of the largest natural disasters ever, thrown into the fire, so to speak, learning how to do all types of stuff that you hadn't been trained to do yet, and just doing whatever you can to help people, digging people out, just the most horrific things you can think of you experienced at 19 years old. But then you worked as a carpenter. I don't know if it was necessarily a finished carpenter. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So yeah, you worked as a finished carpenter. And how long were you doing this? And during this time, were you trying to become a firefighter?
I was, yes. So, I think, pretty much right out of high school, I had started getting into construction, a couple different types of construction. But by the time I think I was 20, I got into finished carpentry, specifically installing doors, mostly commercial doors for schools, colleges, prisons, fire departments. So 100 doors a day sometimes, just like a little piece though. Like we're putting on hinges today, and then the next day we're putting on the people. But yeah, I did that for 4 or 5 years while I was trying to get hired on as a full-time firefighter. And I treated it like the fire service. I'd throw my ladder for construction the same way I throw my ladder as a firefighter. I'd flake out my extension cord the way I'd flick out a hose. Like I was set on being a fireman.
You were focused.
Yeah. So I treated every day like I was a fireman until I became a fireman. But I learned a lot of valuable skills doing that. I learned how to use tools. I learned how doors and locks worked, which is very important as a fireman because we're forcing doors or bypassing doors every shift, trying to get to people, trying to get to fires, trying to make our way to wherever we're called to be. And for any young listeners out there, I would recommend doing some sort of trade. If you're, I don't know, even if you don't want to be a fireman or a police officer, it's just very valuable as an adult, learning how to use your hands and learning how to use tools. So even if it's just for a little bit of time, it might be worth exploring that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to hear some crazy stories? Talk to Eric Buchanan at Eric Buchanan and Associates. You won't believe the lengths some insurance companies will go to deny you your disability insurance claim. But check this out. There was a pharmacist who went back to work part-time so she could take care of her and her family. She accidentally signed up for full-time life insurance benefits instead of part-time. Unfortunately, she was brutally murdered by her ex-husband. And you guessed it, when her state went to file her life insurance claim, they denied it because they said, wait, she signed up for full-time, but she was only part-time. So they tried to reason with the insurance company and said, well, just pay her as if she was a part-time employee. They said, no, we can't do that because she signed up as a full-time employee. To make a long story short, Eric Buchanan and Associates and his team went to work and they got that family paid. So if you've been denied your disability insurance claim or other insurance benefits that you deserve, look up Eric Buchanan and Associates online at buchanandisability.com That's BuchananDisability.com. Eric Buchanan and Associates, helping people who are denied disability, life, long-term care, and health insurance nationwide. So you're now a firefighter with the LA County Fire Department. Is that correct?
Yes, LA County Fire in West Hollywood. I'm at Fire
West Hollywood.
It's a happening.
Is that where all the famous people are?
Yeah, we got the stars on the ground there, and a lot of celebrities. They live above where I work, but they make their way down in there all the time. And it's a happening place. Sunset Boulevard. There's always something going on. Never know what you're going to get. So I'm at Fire Station 8 there, which is one of the largest fire stations in LA County, at least LA County Fire Department. We have 13 guys on our shift. We have 3 shifts, so 39 firefighters. And we have a lot of equipment, too. We have a 100-foot aerial ladder, which you have the tiller driver in the back. I get to do that.
Oh, cool.
Frequently, yeah. We have a paramedic squad, so there's 2 medics on that squad. And then we have a fire engine that follows our aerial truck, and we call that the light force because they go everywhere together. And then we have 1 additional fire engine with 4 personnel on that as well. So we stayed busy.
That is cool.
It's a good time over there.
Well, I'm not going to besmirch where you work, but you can keep Hollywood. I was so disappointed when I went to Hollywood because it looked nothing like it looks on TV. I'm like, this is disgusting.
Yeah, when people visit from out of state and they want to go to Hollywood, I always tell them, it might not be what you expect from what you've seen on TV.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of poverty.
So I know this. There is, and it was like I said, you take one quick left turn and it's just, graffiti and just dirty and nasty. And, of course they keep the strip, looks good, but I was very surprised, when I did this. I know I didn't prepare you for this or ask you this earlier, but, can you share maybe the coolest celebrity call maybe you had to answer? Like you had to go, I don't know if it was a fire or whatever, but it was a celebrity's house that you
think. So I do see a lot of celebrities. I'm not sure if I've been to a house of a celebrity, because they tend to have a lot of help. They tend to take care of themselves, be private. They're not your typical person that needs extra help. So when something goes wrong with somebody of a high class, high status, it's usually really raw, heart attack, something major, not skinny, So, but I've seen Johnny Depp and Arnold Schwarzenegger and a lot of the big dogs. You'll see them drive by and wave or whatnot. So, yeah, there's a lot of them out there, but we try and be respectful and
sure
professional.
Yeah, it'd be tough for me. Actually, I usually try to leave celebrities alone, but I don't know. There'd probably be a couple I'd geek out on and be like, "Hey," trying to force them off the road with my apparatus there. Wait, hey, let me holler at you for a second. All right, so let's go ahead now and shift gears a little bit and talk about all the crazy stuff that my listeners have come to expect when we talk to our first responders. And we'll start with some of the funniest calls that you've answered or been involved with. And one of them has something to do with maybe somebody's body part ending up maybe where it shouldn't have been or something.
Yeah. And it sounds as bad as you make it sound. I guess before I start this story, what am I allowed to say?
It's a podcast. You can say whatever you want.
Okay, I don't want to get you demonetized or disbanded or anything.
Nah, we're good.
Okay, all right. So the call you're referring to happened when I was pretty new on the job. I was still on probation, and for those of you who don't know, when you're on probation, you do all the dirty work. You're the guy getting in there, and this call takes place in West Hollywood, and we show up. It came in as unconscious, and so we go in the door, and a man greets us, and you could tell he was like not quite right. Maybe he's done some drugs. He looked sweaty, and he was freaking out. And we were trying to get him to calm down because initially we're like, well, maybe this is our patient. But it came in as unconscious, so maybe there's somebody else in there that we need to get to. And so we told him to calm down, and my engineer actually told him to calm down, and he said, I have ADHD, I can't calm down. And the engineer, he's like, oh, I do too, you know? And he's like, oh, you can't have ADHD if you're taking your meds, you're too fat. And like, so that's how the call started, and we're like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. So we called for PD just because we were like anticipating some combativeness, and I made my way into the house, and in the next room, I see a naked man, face down, covered in sweat, not moving, and so we're like, oh, is this guy dead? Is he alive? We need to find out. Priorities, you know, see if he's breathing. So we roll him over, me and another new guy, and this guy has a body part still naked. I don't know if you've heard of a cock ring before, but he was wearing
cock ring. Yeah, I've heard of it.
So he wasn't really naked; he was wearing a cock ring, and it was doing its job. He was fully erect, and as we roll him over, he hits me on my shoe loud enough to where everybody hears a thud. So there's a lot of mass and force behind this gentleman, and we all just kind of stopped what we were doing and looked at each other, and I was mortified. I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? So we had to stay professional, and we're trying not to like respond too much to what had just happened. But once we got him out of there and we got him on the gurney and on his way to the ambulance, man, the guys could not stop talking about what had happened to me and how I had been violated. And to this day, I still feel a phantom hits on my leg from time to time. So.
Oh man, yeah, I was getting ready to say you have to be professional in the moment, but boy, once you get back to the hall, that's all you guys are going to be talking about.
You know, we have to debrief. You know, you get PTSD from stuff like that. So
he was already debriefed. What are you talking
about?
Nice. Yeah. So obviously, you know the difference between a man and a woman. You know, you did have basic EMT training. What's this I hear about a pregnant woman that maybe not so much?
Yeah. So here's another interesting call, which could be, I'm sure this could happen anywhere, but it happens more often than not in my district. So we got a call for a woman in labor, and we show up and we see what appears to be a transient human being that turns out to be a guy and dressed like a woman. Even
you said turns out to be a guy.
Yeah,
dressed as a woman.
So this woman is actually maybe not identifying as a guy, but anatomically a guy, and they think that they're pregnant and in labor. So we have to treat it with how it is, you know. So we're like, okay, ma'am, tell us about, you know, your prenatal care and what your doctor's been telling you, and when was your last checkup, and something just wasn't adding up, right? So we were like, when was your last menstrual period? And he's like, oh, I'm a dude. And we're like, okay, so how are you pregnant? And he's like, well, I felt it move. And we're just like,
oh man,
okay, well, anything else bothering you today? And she said that she had chest pain, which our criteria for that is we have to do an EKG. So luckily for this call, I was not the low man or the new guy. And we had our new guy come in and do a 12-lead EKG, which you have to expose the chest. And this man had fake breasts as well. So it was a very confusing call for our new guy.
So had like implants?
Had implants.
Okay, all right.
But also male anatomy too. So,
sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we had to keep treating the symptoms, and what our patient was telling us, and eventually we sent him to the hospital for chest pain, but it came in as a woman in labor, and it turned out not to be that.
And you can't say, dude, you're an idiot. Just shut up. You actually have
to.
Be
respectful and treat everybody with how they want to be treated.
I'm not talking about the sex part, but he can't be pregnant.
Yeah, there's probably some psychological, maybe drugs involved. We never know what we're going to get. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking. Maybe, it'd be treated for a psych eval or something like that. But it's like, golly, just, I don't know. We're out there right now. Yeah. Man. What about something about drug overdose?
Okay. Let's see. So this was a crazy call. This is on Sunset Boulevard. We get a call to, I forget, it's a famous hotel. It's one of the famous hotels there. And there's a 2-story master suite. It's the nicest place that they rent out. And we get a call for overdose. So we walk in, and it's a pretty big area. There's like a staircase and everything. It's kind of dark, but there seems to be a lot of noise and a fair amount of people in there. And we see some guy on the ground laughing and out of his mind. And we're like, oh, okay, here's our patient. And we start to go over to him, and they're like, no, that's not your patient. The patient's upstairs. And we're like,
this guy's relatively okay.
Yeah, we're like, oh boy, if this isn't our guy, the next guy is worse. So let's see what we get. Oh
my goodness.
So we start making our way up the stairs to the master suite. And there was this huge guy. I think he was speaking Italian. So maybe he was from Italy. At least that's what we thought at first. And all he was doing was screaming, mi amor, and different phrases in Spanish. He was bleeding from his head, and his girlfriend was there, like, trying to figure out what to do. And he had already knocked over those banisters that go on the nice beds, with a thing on top. He'd knocked those off.
Like the canopy. Canopy bed?
Like a canopy.
Okay.
And he was aggressive and combative and yelling, and bigger than all of us. And we're like, oh, man. All right, we're going to try and get this guy to calm down. And we have the paramedics with us, and they're trying to, talk nice to him so he doesn't freak out, but we're also on edge because he looks like he's about to hit us. And then, he starts getting out of control and pushing us over and bumping into stuff. So the medics are trying to get one of their drugs that calms people down. And the rest of us are trying to restrain this guy. And now the police are up there, and they tend to be more standoffish than we are. We're able to be a little bit more physical with our patients in our area. The police have lots of paperwork every time they put hands on and stuff, and we don't.
Yeah.
So we're trying to we're doing everything right, but we're trying to keep him safe and keep ourselves safe. And eventually we get him on the ground, and they give him one of their calming drugs. And we need handcuffs to restrain this guy at this point. So one of the medics yells to the cop, like, hey, give me the cuffs. So our medics end up handcuffing this guy. And we're still trying to calm him down. And then we get this idea to get his girlfriend involved to help calm him. So we said, ma'am, can you please help calm your husband or boyfriend? And she's like, oh, yeah, no problem. So she starts making out with him. Like upside down, like Spider-Man, like he's on the ground, and she starts kissing on him and stuff, and we're like, whatever works, I guess. And so that was most of the call, and we get him down the stairs. We're all helping him get down the stairs, and by now the drugs are starting to kick in and calm him down a little bit. And he starts speaking perfect English, and we're like, hey man, where are you from? And he's like, oh, Utah. And we're like, oh man, we're trying to figure out what he took, because he went into a different dimension for a little bit there.
Oh man!
And
oh man!
yeah, and then his other friends, they'd taken all sorts of drugs, and they weren't as bad as he was, but they mixed a lot of stuff. So that's
just a typical day in West Hollywood,
right.
baby.
Yeah, and some people can handle it, some people can't, and it's usually the out of towners that come to visit, that want to have a good time that they just can't handle it. We end up having to get involved.
Funny. That's funny. Well, I want to get 2 more quick stories before we have you tell us about the Williams key, because I want to hear all about that too. But people don't think about sometimes you guys encounter some what I would consider some pretty dumb criminals. So you got one story dealing with a couple of roommates, and one of them didn't make it out as well as the other roommate. If you want to tell us about that.
Yeah. So this one was interesting. We responded to, I forget how it came in, but we get to the house and there's a roommate that greets us at the door, and he's like, "The guy you want, he's locked in the bathroom." And he's like, I think he might have hurt himself. So we go, we bust down the door, and this guy is just covered in blood with holding a samurai sword. And we're like, oh, shoot. And he's dead. And so we pull him out.
The guy holding the sword is dead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And we pull him out to try and do CPR. It looked like it had just recently happened. And we're doing CPR and stuff. And his stab wounds are like, if you wanted to kill yourself, he was not stabbing himself in the right place, at least not initially. So he's like stuck all over. And you wouldn't do that to yourself. Typically. So
right.
Some stuff was not adding up, and his roommate.
Well, you are in West Hollywood now. You get the right drugs, you might be able to stab yourself like that.
True. I'm sure that can play a factor sometimes, but our suspicions were that he had some help.
Okay.
And the guy that helped him standing over us the whole time while we're doing CPR, and we're like, "Hey, cops, might want to interview that guy." Yeah, because I don't know. I don't think he killed himself. So, yeah.
Now, did he give any a version of events that happened?
We were pretty busy, so I wasn't listening too closely, but he was just saying like, yeah, I came home and he was talking to me from the bathroom, and then he wasn't, so I thought I'd call 911.
A bunch of BS.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's Chicago. I don't remember what the play is, where it's like, yeah, he fell on my knife 17 times.
Yeah, it was like that. If you're gonna kill yourself with a sword, you're gonna only want to hit yourself like once, right? You're gonna
exactly.
I don't know how they do it, but I'm sure I could figure it out the first time.
And then I think I want to have you tell me about a theft suspect that was really. He really didn't want to let go of, his accomplishments and wanted you to help him transport it.
Yeah, this guy, he was a transient, a homeless, urban camper type of gentleman, and he needed to go to the hospital, but he had a bicycle with him that he wanted to take to the hospital with him as well. And his excuse to us why he couldn't give up his bicycle is because he worked really hard to steal it, and he didn't want to let it go. So we're like, hey man, at least you're honest. He had a good attitude about him. So we actually did take his bike with him. You guys are accomplices now.
That is hilarious.
I don't remember actually, to be honest. It's a little fuzzy.
Oh yeah, I don't recall. Well, man, thank you so much for sharing all those stories with us, Trevor. My guest today is Trevor Williams with the LA County Fire Department. And now we're going to get to what one of the things he's done now. He's also the inventor of a cool device called the Williams key or the William key.
Williams key.
There it is.
With an S.
The Williams key. So tell me how that came about and what it does.
Sure. So, I shouldn't have worn a black shirt. I guess I wanted to go on the trip.
There you go. Raise it up there a little bit. So we'll release the video. Everybody have to watch the video.
Williams key. There we go. All right.
Nice.
Or against.
So it looks like an angle iron to me with the points on the end.
Yeah. So it's a very basic tool, and it's for opening doors that are locked. Not deadbolts, but kind of lower security doors, gates, the stuff we run into daily as firefighters that keep us from getting to somebody's apartment or whatnot. So this blade part right here can reach behind the anti-vandal plate that covers up the strike of the lock, and you're still able to toggle that strike. And then if you can visualize the strike, and it's like lower security, you can use this side, the hook side, to just hook that strike and open it up. So this came about because I worked on doors, installed doors, know how locks work. It hurt me every time I saw a door get broken, because it's thousands of dollars for the homeowner or the business owner to fix these doors that we break every day.
Right.
So I was always trying to find a kinder way to enter somebody's property or house when they call us out that doesn't do damage. So I know how to pick locks and stuff like that as the door installer that I was, but most people can't do that. So I made this tool that I used for years on my own, and eventually people were seeing me always go to this tool and get them in the door. So people wanted it. And a lot of people come through my station, overtimers and stuff from all over the county. So a lot of people were seeing me use this tool and get into places. So they asked me to make them a small batch, and I made maybe, 50 of them, sent them out to the people who had asked. And after that, it exploded. And everybody wanted one. Everybody wanted to buy them. They wanted them customized. So I'll put people's names on this side. And people buy them as gifts now, and I sell to a lot of police officers, janitors, real estate, FBI, Air Force, military, SEALs, breachers, SWAT teams, like everybody. I get messages all day long now. And then not long after making this standard version, I made a folding version because people wanted to put these in their turnouts. In their pockets, or police wanted it on their tactical gear. So we make a tactical molly case that this fits in, and there's a handle that slides back so that bolt is out of the way. You're still able to use it almost as well as this. Because it has a moving part, it's a little bit weaker. But we haven't really seen these break. So this is the best seller now, the folding Williams key. And then,
is it as quick as you guys taking your ram or whatever you used to open, crowbar, whatever you used to open a door with? It won't work on every door, but there's thousands of types of doors and locks out there. So the ones that once you get one, you'll learn what it works with and what it doesn't, and you'll be like, all right, cool, I know this is gonna work. You're in half a second. Versus that is so cool.
With a Halligan or a battering ram. They could take you a couple minutes or at least 20, 30 seconds, depending on how strong and talented you are. But
I can see that being a real advantage to a tactical team, a SWAT team, going to serve a warrant or something like that, if they recognize that they can use this to quickly and quietly open the door versus hitting it a couple of times with a ram. They maybe get a little more element of surprise there. So that's really, really cool.
Yeah. And so these are mostly for outward swinging doors, and I've started selling a little piece of plastic in these tubes. This is called the inward door slip knife, and this is for inward swinging doors. So this reaches around the door jamb and helps to bypass the strike of a door. But that's what it looks like.
Look at that.
So it's very basic. I tell people, hey, if you don't want to buy one, just make one out of a water bottle or something. But it's useful. It's useful to have, and I've made them on scene before out of water bottles. Like, hey, we got to get in. Oh, I forgot my thing. All right, I'll make one real quick and I'll cut one up.
Wow. Hey, have you been on Shark Tank yet?
No. Oh man, I'm too busy for that. If we get any bigger, I'm gonna have to reevaluate my life. But we've sold over 11,000 of these Williams keys.
Oh wow!
In a pretty short amount of time, and I keep having larger and larger orders and contracts hit me up. We're now, I could probably double those sales pretty soon here, as it just continues to take off. And the social media has helped a lot. There's a lot of videos out there now. TikTok is doing well. Instagram's doing well. I just started pursuing YouTube a little bit harder. So now the YouTube's doing good too, and I'm excited to see where this takes it. It's got my name on it, so I'm like, I don't want to really, sell it. I want to be a part of it. I enjoy filling the orders and interacting with the community. I get to talk shop with people every day. People send me messages, send me pictures of doors, send me videos of them using the tool, and we talk. And sometimes I learn something, and a lot of times other people are learning something. So.
Man, that is really cool, Trevor. I hope it does everything you want it to do. I was going to say, I hope you make $1 million, but you maybe your goals are different. So whatever your goals are, I hope this helps you get there. But it sounds like a really, really cool tool, and I'm glad that it's taking off. So if somebody did want to get one, I mean, how would you recommend people find you? Maybe what's your, whether you want to give them social media, website, whatever. What would you like for people? How would you like for people to reach out to you if they want to check this tool out?
Yeah. So hopefully we can include this information in the description below of this video.
I'll put it in the show notes.
But WilliamsKey.com is the easiest way to come and find my products. And I actually make a lot of other stuff too, and lots of hats and t-shirts and stickers. It's a whole brand of stuff, but there's a lot of things I sell, but these are the main products. I even have I try not to advertise this one because it's such a hassle to ship and it gets lost all the time. But there's a giant version of this called the XXL Magnum HD. It's 35 inches long. Please don't order it, but I also sell that.
That's funny. I make it, but I don't want to sell it. I don't want to ship it to you. Local pickup only.
Yeah, it's a specialty item, so only buy it if you really, really want. So website's really cool. The best place to find all this stuff. WilliamsKey.com. I'm on Instagram as the Williams Key. The same with TikTok. The same with YouTube. If you search Williams Key, you'll find me.
So search Williams Key. WilliamsKey.com is the best place to find them, but you can search them on all the other social media platforms, Williams Key, and check this cool thing out. So Trevor, I want to thank you for joining me today. It has been a pleasure, man. You've got some great stories. Thank you for your heart of service even before you became a fireman. Obviously, that was ingrained in you. And as far as that goes, thank your parents as well, because it sounds like they've been doing some great work. And it shows by the work that you're continuing to do. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And to all of you, thank you so much for listening. And as I always ask you, make sure that you follow and share the episode and give us a rating too. That really helps us a lot, especially if you listen on Apple Podcasts. Give us that 5-star rating. And if you have any suggestions of something you'd like to hear, maybe some questions you'd like for me to ask, or if you just have a cool guest that you think would be a great person to have on the show, shoot me an email at 911what.podcast@gmail.com. Again, thank you for listening, and until next time, have a blessed day.
Thanks for listening to 911 What? We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have comments or suggestions, please email us at 911what.podcast@gmail.com. And thanks to Carlos Bail Bonding and Eric Buchanan and Associates for making this episode possible.